Welcome to Books, Kids, and Creations, a part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'm your host, Tracy Bloom, and today I am here with designer, artist, builder, maker, TV star, Jimmy DiResta.
And part-time author, thanks to you.
Part-time author. You've written a couple books. You have a couple books.
Well, written is a loose term. I send recordings and people transcribe them. Yeah. I can't even write an email, as you noticed. I'm sure you noticed.
But you do a lot of other great things. So for those who don't know who you are, I mean, you could just Google your name and all kinds of great things pop up. But you have been building and creating and designing things for a really long time. How did you get started building things and kind of transition that into a career?
Well, it's a funny thing is that I grew up in a workshop with my dad. I have two older brothers and one younger sister. And so the four of us were always hanging around in my dad's workshop. And my sister really not so much. And she got into hand work a little bit later in life when she realized she was an artist. Right after high school, she started doing more and more artwork. Well, in high school a little bit, but ever since I personally was a little kid, I've been playing in the workshop. And my brothers, not so much either. They kind of got into hand making stuff a little bit older. But ever since I was a tiny kid, I was just by my dad's side, hanging out in the workshop and playing with the hot glue gun. And my dad was always putting scraps in front of me. First was the hot glue gun, and then he slowly began to let me use some of the saws, like when I was like 7, 8, 9 years old. And learn the value of getting injured early on by cutting my fingertips on saw blades and stuff. And my dad, being old school, the opposite of a helicopter dad, he would laugh it off and just give me the roll of black tape and say, just tape it up and keep going. So my dad taught me the importance of just keep moving, even though you're getting hurt and whatever else. But yeah, just really, it started early and it always came very natural to me, amongst my friends, and people would always say, oh, let Jimmy do it. Jimmy knows how to do it. Let Jimmy figure that out. And to me, it was just so natural. So I never really had to make the decision to decide this is what I want to be. I guess that did come in the way that I had to decide what discipline in art I wanted to decide when I was in high school. And it was either going to be an architect or a graphic designer. And I was going down the road to be an architect for several years. And then I realized how difficult for me math was, and the engineering aspects of calculations and physics. And I was always good with geometry, but when it came to physics calculations, I always saw things more visually than numerically. And that's when I began to realize I could have a career as a visual artist. And I still didn't know what that meant, but I started going in that direction.
And then you went into toy making, right?
Well, it's funny because when I was at the School of Visual Arts, I was in graphic design. And so in that little encapsulated 4 years as a graphic designer, I found myself becoming more and more frustrated. My first 2 years at art college, School of Visual Arts in New York, in 85, 86, I was a graphic design student. And I started realizing that when we would present our work, I would always bring three-dimensional things that I made and said, well, this would be a photograph. And then everybody's putting up black and white line work. And I would put up like something I made on the bandsaw or letters that I cut out. And I said, well, imagine this is photographed. And I didn't fit in at all. And one particular teacher brought me and introduced me to another teacher and said, this is where you belong. And that was three-dimensional illustration. And so it was basically graphic design, like composition and understanding the image, like the closed-in image, but how you make that image. Instead of using graphic images like cut paper, I was using cut wood, plastic, metal, and the photograph of that would be the final result. And so that was that particular course that I started going on in the end of year 2 for year 3 and 4 of my college career was prop making, industrial design, three-dimensional illustration. And it was a little bit of all those things. And I really felt at home. And then in my final year, my last semester actually, second half of my last semester at school, I had all this extra credits to take. I mean, I had all this extra space to fill. And I took a class called Toys and Games. And there I met a teacher named Mark Setta Ducati, who became a big inspiration in my life. And he said, you're a very good visual thinker, very good visual maker. Maker wasn't a term back then, but you're really good with your hands. You're a good inventor. And he said, considering the toy business is very fashion oriented, every year they need new inventions. He said, you should consider doing this. It comes naturally to you. And so when I graduated school, he immediately started getting me involved in his circle, introducing me to friends that did what he did, and introducing me into what they did. And I began to do what they did in designing and inventing toys. And because they were a little bit further advanced in their careers, they were kind of more businessmen as opposed to like 3D guys like me. I wasn't quite a businessman as much as a just problem solver. And so I was learning business from them at the same time they were saying, hey, can you help me design these wacky glasses? Can you help me? Here's a half prototype I made. Can you take it to the next step? And so I really learned troubleshooting, designing and inventing stuff on the fly, working with Mark, and all at the same time, always doing my own stuff too. So, and I would show Mark, I was like, I got this crazy idea. He's like, well, if you do this, and this is the type, this could be either a toy, or this could be a kid's toy, or a dog toy, or, this could be a center point of a game, so all these different aspects of toy design, I learned from hanging out with Mark and his group of friends. It was one of the most influential times of my life, one of the most inspiring artistic times of my life. And, a lot of what I do today is all really, it's all born out of those relationships I made when I met Mark, really.
That's really cool. I mean, it just goes to show you how important teachers can be.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of times, and then I became a teacher in '94. I started teaching at the School of Visual Arts, and I started encountering students that had the same frustration that I did when I was a student, not really feeling fulfilled in your chosen field and wanting more or wanting something different, but, realizing the stress and strain of having to switch schools or switch curriculums. And I inspired a lot of students to stay in school. A lot of students wanted to quit. They're like, I don't, nowadays I can only imagine how many students really want to quit because everything's online now,
Right.
aside from the actual physical degree or, the documentation of saying I graduated college. Most people don't seem to care too much about that. You can go online and learn a lot more than you would in the past. You'd have to actually be at a terminal to learn that work. Now, the only terminal you need to be at is a computer.
Yeah.
You need to meet somebody and be like, how do you do this? Well, this is how I did it. This is the best way to do it. And this is my friend who also does it. He does it a little different way. Now you go online and in an hour, you see 14 different people making a hammerhead, and you know exactly how you would approach it, shortly after that.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty cool that like you've
different world.
Yeah, kind of gone from building, taking your passion, and then shifting that into teaching, and you still continue to teach. You have shop classes, you have your YouTube channel, which is hugely successful, and then you're now doing
Kids show. Crazy kids show on Netflix called Making Fun.
Yeah.
And I must admit, I mean, I'm not the creator of the show. It's a guy named Michael Dare is responsible for coming up with the concept and putting us in that concept. It's not really a brand new concept, but the idea of having us 5 grown children playing as kids, for kids. It was Mike's idea. I was a bit grumpy about it. And he says, just stay grumpy. I just want you to stay grumpy so the kids think you're a grumpy old man. And then he goes, keep that attitude. It'll be funny. And yeah, Mike really had the vision, and we all just trusted him. And the show it's not a runaway out of stratospheric. Is that a word?
Yeah, maybe.
It's not out of this world hit, but it's above average as far as ratings, and it's above average as far as reviews. I haven't seen any bad things written about it.
Yeah.
But there's a group of makers that don't like it because they have all this personal gripes, which has nothing to do with the actual quality of the show. But there's a whole bunch of makers that turned on me and turned on the group because they think the show was taken from somebody's particular YouTube channel, which it wasn't. But that kind of is a little bit of a stain, a tiny stain on a much, much, much bigger, brighter day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And how did you find those kids? Like, did you know those kids?
Oh, casting. The casting. No. Going into season 2, we have about 500 emails of people that want to be on the show. Right. If we get a season 2, at the moment we don't. But if the way the show casting reached out to kids, and there's like in Hollywood, and I guess in the world of Netflix, there's all types of ways of getting anything. In the TV business, there's ways of getting anything you want. They have a casting company which deals just with kids.
Oh.
And it's actually, one thing was nice. I remember dealing a little bit with kids way, way, way back early on when my brother was on a show and there was little kids in the show, and it was really complicated because of labor laws, and the kids can only work so many hours at a time. And the show, they had to have twins. A set of twins is a very popular thing especially for drama and comedies when it's scripted. because the kid can only work so long. So they just take the kid out and put a twin in. So they have two people play one character. So identical twins work a lot in Hollywood if they want it
Huh.
for that, identical twin children. But
Okay.
in this show, it was kids coming in, and then we'd interview them and see what their stupid ideas were. And we'd pick one of them and make it. And the whole time I'm supposed to be grumpy. And the kids like it. It's really funny. I get messages from kids like, "Are you really grumpy? I don't believe that you're grumpy." Those letters are really cute.
So are you really grumpy?
I can be. I certainly can be, because the TV people just kind of like run roughshod over the whole property. And we had a great group. And, if any of them hear this, they're all going to be like, who the got you upset? You were so nice to everybody. I got a little upset with the PAs once in a while when they didn't clean up and they thought they were done cleaning. And I'd come in and I'd start yelling. I was like, "This is what you think is clean?" And then I'd start yelling and sweeping up angrily like my dad. But so Mike would always say, channel that towards the character.
Yeah.
So
Your inner grumpiness.
yeah.
So
But generally I try to be pleasant as possible with everybody. And if I got grumpy, I would always apologize later.
Right. What are I know the show you made some kind of a catapult or something.
Yeah.
Dinosaur.
The kids would come up with these ideas in the pre-interviews, and then they would pitch them to us, and the producers would encourage them to make the ideas crazier and stupider. So the kids would come up with the stupid. These one kids had cat poop that kept being in their yard, and they wanted to throw the cat poop into the neighbor's yard where the cats lived.
Naturally.
And so they came up with this idea of throwing cat poop over the fence. And then we turned it into a competition. So half the guys I was on one team and the other guys were on the other team, and they had a catapult. No, they had a trebuchet. Zach made the trebuchet with Paul.
Yes.
So that's where the whole idea came from.
It's in our backyard.
Yeah. So the trebuchet, and then the catapult, and then, all the puns just keep coming, especially with Graz. Graz can't stop coming up with puns.
Right. That would be a natural one with the catapult.
Catapoop, so dumb.
Yeah.
And then I realized the catapult that we were working on worked intermittently, because when we would load it, and if it sat relaxed, the rope would get relaxed and it would stop working. It wouldn't shoot nearly as far. So every time we cocked it, and if we didn't pull the pin right away, it would go like, boo, because the rope would relax. But if we pulled the pin right away, it would do what it was supposed to.
Yeah.
And so the day we set up, I'm like, guys, if we don't set it up and pull the pin. So we set it up, and then of course everyone's like, get the drone in the air, get the camera. Oh, we need another tape. The battery's low. We got to switch batteries. Wait, my microphone's not working. And then all of a sudden, the thing's been sitting loaded for 20 minutes, and we go to pull the trigger, and it just literally goes. We knew we weren't going to win, but I didn't have it. I really didn't expect it to only go like 6 inches. I thought it was going to go like 20.
When we had the trebuchet in our yard, they launched a gallon of milk. It went backwards and landed on the top of our house. Giant explosion. It was pretty awesome.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But the show was really, really fun, and the fun and inspiration telegraphs through to the audience, and that's the one thing we hear the most, is like, we really could see how much fun you guys really had.
Yeah, it looked fun.
It was.
But you've done okay. So how did you get into television itself? Because you did a lot of shows with your brother too.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like, were you guys just like, hey, let's just record our stuff?
Well, kinda. I was always recording, and then it was around 2001 when one of my students got me a hacked copy of Final Cut Pro, because it was when Apple finally put out their own editing software. This was 20 years ago. And so editing software became available to the masses, where in the past you'd have to buy a subscription to Avid, and you'd have to go to a special computer you have to go to an Avid station, and now is the first time you could actually edit professional quality video in a professional type setting at home on your computer. And so I began to learn Final Cut Pro. And then my brother, around the summer of 2001, 2002, he said, this was actually right after 9/11. So it was in the spring of 2002. He said, well, why don't we come to LA and shoot me picking garbage, and we'll make it into stuff. He goes, you do it off camera. And like, I never had any intentions of being on camera. It never was anything that I desired. I wanted to be a creative. I wanted to be a creative filmmaker. So I was like, all right, cool. So I went out to LA and I spent a few days shooting my brother picking garbage and making it into a table. And we made and he's a funny comedian. And so he was funny the whole time, being silly. And in that particular pitch tape, I focused on just him. He made a simple table that he could make, but in the deck that we put together to pitch the idea, we had 25, 30 ideas, and, all somewhat complicated, like we made a canoe made out of plastic bottles, and, it was all about recycling stuff out of the garbage. And so when we finally got an opportunity to pitch the television show, the producer who was here in the pitch, he goes, so you make things funny, he said to John, and he looks at me, he goes, and you could make anything, right? I go, yeah, I said, I'm going to be the behind the scenes, head of the art department, making sure everything he makes is going to be good and quality. He said, well, why don't we just do an experiment? He goes, why don't you be the funny guy, and why don't you be the creative guy? Who'll just do brothers. You okay with being on camera? I was like, yeah, sure. Well, he goes, all right, well, let's shoot a pilot and see where it goes. And so that was the first pilot we shot. That was like in the spring of 2002.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And then
so we shot that, and that was the first time we worked together on camera, John and I.
Yeah. And then you
And
did other stuff after that. Like you
yeah,
did.
so we did that show. That was on FX Network. It was called Trash to Cash.
Yeah.
And it was funny because email was like slowly becoming popular then. It's 20 years ago. Email wasn't something you constantly would keep checking. It was like something you check every like 7 or 8 days. You'd be like, oh, let me see if
Right.
anybody sent me a message. It was like going to it was like the Pony Express. And occasionally I'd open my email and I'd have a message from someone that found me on AOL Messenger or whatever, and it would say, I like that show you did, but if you ever did another show, can you just focus on what you make instead of all the silly funny stuff, so because there was a little theatrics in that show. We would make over somebody's problem experience, like somebody didn't have money to have a party, so we would find everything in the garbage and put together their party, and like make beer taps out of garbage and stupid stuff, or like gambling tables.
Yeah.
And so we decided if we did another show, it wouldn't necessarily be about the person that needed help. It would be about the focus on the project. So like today we're going to make a whatever, and we're going to make a go-kart, and then making the go-kart, we're going to solve and show you all the detailed problems on how to make a go-kart. And so we made that show. We were calling that Making It. That was the first time we used that name. Making It was a show that we were able to sell to HGTV. And all the while I'm shooting my own pitch tapes with no production company, just doing them myself, with my new editing software and learning editing the whole while. And we put that second show together called Making It. And then when we were able to sell that show, they ended up changing their name to Hammered on HGTV. So we did 28 episodes of a show called Hammered, which was really fun. And then during Hammered, me and my brother made our own pitch tape of a show, another pitch tape of a show where we would pick garbage and sell it at the flea market. So we thought it would be funny to just like actually find things in the garbage, clean them off, and then bring them to the flea market and sell them. And then in the process of shooting that tape, we realized we could modify stuff, clean it up a little bit. And so we were able to sell that show in 2010, even though we made the pitch tape 5 years earlier. And that was called Lord of the Fleas. And so we were able to sell that show to Discovery Channel. And so we did that show. Yeah, we did that show in the summer of 2011. We did 12 episodes of that show. That was called, they changed the name to Dirty Money for the air. Mm-hmm. And then once we were done with that, and it's funny because what people don't know is when as talent and somewhat creative talent, and the idea that we reintroduced these ideas to the networks, it was always difficult to get a producer credit. It's like impossible. You have to, there's like some Illuminati initiation process. You got to like drip wax on your faces. I don't know how it goes, but you're always talent. You never cross that threshold of becoming a producer or created by credit. It's just impossible to get. And so that being said, you don't ever I never spoke to one person at Discovery Channel. Maybe one person came to set. We spoke to that woman. The production company shields you from everything. They don't want the talent going around the production company making plans with the network. So they keep you. And so I respect that barrier. And, all you're ever going to do is get yourself in trouble if you try and break that, that
process.
Yeah. And so I just happily just stayed in my lane and did my TV show and did my stuff. And so I never spoke to anybody at Discovery Channel. And then it's the same process now at Netflix, even though this time around I said I have to be a producer on the show, even if in name only, because I've earned it. I'm in my 50s now. I mean, I've done hundreds of hours of television at this point, working on NBC as a hired person on another show a couple of other shows being hired person. At this point, I think I deserve a producer credit. So I said, I'm not going to do the show unless I get a producer credit. So they acquiesced and gave me that producer credit. All that being said, I still never speak to anybody at Netflix.
Huh.
So from day to day, people just think I can just pick up the phone and speak to Ted Sandra Sarantis and say like, hey, Ted, what about if we make a cat a poop? And, he'd be like, you know what, let me get back to you. I don't speak to anybody at Netflix.
Huh.
And I very rarely speak to anybody at the production company. They don't want to be bothered unless they have something to actually talk about.
Yeah.
So, occasionally when there was a dust up about who invented the show on Twitter, occasionally they kept checking in to see how serious this thing was going to get. But they said apparently every single time a new show comes out on Netflix, there's always 20 people that say they invented the show and they want to sue the company, and they always fade away because, people might meet somebody on the bus and say like, I have a great idea, and
Right.
then that person was on the bus with them. And then there was the person that's the head of the show or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so after all is said and done, it's funny. I had a bigger point. I forgot what I was going to say, but the big point in general is I don't speak to anybody at Netflix, and I don't know anything that's going on with the show personally.
Yeah.
We were basically hired talent. We had a really good time and we did the best we could, and we did a good job. And the producers that on the creative team did a fantastic job editing the show, putting it together. And now we just have to sit back and wait. So
Yeah.
people think like every day I'm on the phone with everybody at Netflix going, hey, if you do one more post on Instagram, you'll get those numbers up. They don't tell you anything. They don't tell you numbers. They don't tell you if the show's good. They don't tell you if the show's bad. They don't tell you we're thinking about another season. They say nothing. So I know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just because this is also part of the Authors on the Air Network, we have to talk about the books you've done. One of which just had a birthday. You just had a birthday. This book just had a birthday also.
Oh, wow. Is it 2 years? 2 years? 3 years? 3 years.
3 years old. Yes.
Wow.
This book is a little cartoon version of Jimmy.
I wish I looked that cute when I was that age.
Yeah, well, and when we worked on this book, we tried to put in here things that you had actually made. And I know you were talking about go-karts.
Yep, go-karts and canoes.
Yeah, and the canoes. So this little book
I get a lot of messages. People love that book. It's great. And it's your brainchild. You included me in graciously as co-author. So thank you.
Yeah.
And it's great. And like I said, my relationship with Walmart, we'll see where it goes. Hopefully I can get a chance to introduce it to Walmart. And it'll be available on my website. And as soon as I get the stock in-house, I'm going to start showing it on.
That should be soon. Those books are en route to you. So yeah.
And no, it's been great. And I'm not very good at writing. I'm horrible at writing. And like I said, I can't spell anything. Sometimes the telephone is like, what are you trying to say exactly? Because I don't know what the hell you're trying to spell. That happens to me more often than not. And I've always had a difficult time with writing. I mean, I can creatively conceive of stuff, but when it comes to like writing it and the nuance, and you go like 5 levels deep. I'm always like on the surface of the water. You'll take a scene and make it, it's connected to that, and it's got this deep aspect to it. So it's great collaborating with you, being able to just like throw broad concepts, and then you take it and you give it a full. I give you line art, and you take it and make it beautiful depth of color.
Yeah, my brain works in a whole different way than yours. So
yeah. And creative writing is something that I just could never get my head around, and it just doesn't come natural to me. Like the way that I've always been visually, I can visually think of anything, most within reason, and pretty much trust my ability to grab a material or a tool. I can tell you have that when it comes to writing. Creative writing. So I did write a book with Make Magazine years ago. And I said to the guys, I'm not going to write because I'm not good at it. So I said, I could give you voiced over videos and you could transcribe my conversation. So that's how we got through that first book with Make Magazine.
Was that the wood shop mastery book?
Yes. That was Make Magazine was doing a lot of kind of shoppy kind of manual type books. They almost look like industrials for, with a couple of the makers that were a little bit more visible. And that's how that came about. Yeah. We're working on a book now. Taylor actually is leading we got approached by a publisher whose name, believe it or not, I can't remember. Hold on. I have the card. It happens to be right here. Schiffer, Schiffer Publishing?
Like SCH?
Yep. SCHIFFER.
Uh-huh.
Schiffer Publishing in in Elkin, Pennsylvania.
I would have to look more deeply into that. I know the name.
Yeah, they do a lot of creative books, and they reached out to me. They want to do sort of like a coffee table book based like and I said I would like for it to be not necessarily like a big but like kind of a bigger, but really more visual and like kind of a lot of my like kind of digging into my philosophy of life and taking things breezy and easy and trying to have fun with mostly everything and trying to see the good and the bad and
Yeah,
they want to kind of like delve into my philosophy a little bit and it'll be really more written out of interviews with a ghostwriter. So
that's awesome. That's
yeah,
really
and
cool.
it's going to be like a little bit of kind of like a Ralph Lauren styled book where it's like a lot about textures and like photographs of my beat up hands and like my beat up clothes and my
Yeah.
workshop and that's
And
really
chickens.
Taylor's ideas to really have like a very visual. So
Yeah. You can have the chickens and
yeah,
all the
chickens and
things.
all my crazy turkeys and cats and animals and yeah.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
Taylor makes really cool stuff too. I mean, Taylor has these beautiful pieces of furniture and
Yeah.
her
I
books.
tell everybody that's, obviously opposites attract, but I tell everybody that, you need to have, if you're creative, your life will be easy if you have a creative partner. Like you and Zach are a great couple because you guys both creative in your own way
Yeah,
and you really complement each other and you guys can understand each other's process.
right.
Even if it's not quite physical, it's metal and versus writing, but the creative process is a creative process, whether it's visual, physical, or, thinking. And Taylor and I get along well because I think we both understand the process,
Yeah.
and you could simply go, hey, what do you think of this? Like, what do you think? She'd be like, nope, put it under that. No, I don't like that joint. Do it back the other way. That's better. And I go, okay, that's what I was kind of wondering, and we could bounce each other off each other like that, which is always great.
And there's honesty there without,
Yeah.
completely offending. Like Zach's making a chair right now. And I was like, I don't feel like it's big enough for like a normal butt. Like I feel like people's butts are bigger than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true too. You live with a creative person and like, no one's going to fluff anything. They're going to like,
Right.
no, you picked that color. Did you pick that? Because that is horrible. I picked that color. No.
Yeah.
It's got to be a dark gray. I'm like, okay, it's going to be dark gray.
Yeah. Well, and he in turn also kind of keeps me grounded because I normally have about 4 or 5 books I'm working on at once. Like I have to have at least four. I feel like I'm not doing
Yeah.
enough or something.
Yeah, that's funny. Not doing enough.
Yeah. Like it just feels like, okay, I need more balls in the air, more things going on. But he keeps me grounded to where I don't like fly off and just start working on a million things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Somebody's on my.
Speaking of, so
Yeah.
what big fun things besides the coffee table book? You have the TV show. What else are you working on?
Right now it's spring cleanup. My brother's walking through the room right now, but it's spring cleanup and we're cleaning up the backyard, getting the backyard ready for potentially maybe doing a new season of the show, but we don't know yet. But I'm being prepared. I'd rather be prepared than be surprised.
Yeah.
But in the process of being prepared, I'm making the place more creative, more accessible to, new projects. Going into the summer, two of my big projects I'd like to make is a go-kart, an electric go-kart.
Ooh.
It's going to be a welding project, and a full-on woodworking project is going to be a new boat. I made a boat
Oh,
in
cool.
2018, and I would like to do another. I'm going to do like a small dinghy rowboat made by the same. It's a set of plans made by Bear Mountain Boats by the
Cool.
same designer. I think Steve Killen is the name of the guy. Anyway, it's a really beautiful boat that I saw at a little get together we were at on the water a couple of years ago, and I was like, "Oh my God, that is an absolutely beautiful boat." And they said, oh, you wanted the plans? You want to make one? I was like, absolutely. So that's a project I want to do at least begin this summer.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Good timing. Like
So
this
those are
boat.
those are two big projects.
Yeah, those are both good ones.
Yeah.
And you're going to Makers Central.
Yeah.
Right.
You guys going? You guys aren't going.
We are going. Yes.
Oh, you're going. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So when people
Yeah.
start throwing eggs and tomatoes at me, you guys can help save me.
I'm gonna be there heckling.
Oh, good. Okay. Because it seems like all the people that think that we stole the show live in England.
Oh no, so they will
me
be
and
there.
Derek,
Like for
me and
real.
Derek are nervous to
Aw.
go. We're nervous to get off the plane.
Well, I'm so excited about all the great things you're doing, and
Thank you. Thank you for
um,
including me in your world as well. Thank you.
yeah, my wacky world. But for those of you who want to check out Jimmy's YouTube channel, we'll post a link to his YouTube channel
Yeah.
where you can watch all of the great things he builds. He also has a podcast
Yep.
called
We have a podcast called Making It. This
Making
is
It.
the
Yes.
third time that name's been used. And
Yeah.
then I also have another podcast called the Fits All Podcast, which is about restoring antique machinery.
Very cool. Very cool. And anybody in England who wants to come and heckle Jimmy, he will
Mhm.
be at Maker's
Yes, please.
first weekend of May. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The May 29th, the 30, 31, and 1st, whatever those, I don't know, April of 21, 31 days. I don't know. Like the show ends on the 1st of May. So whatever those previous couple days are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, and
Oh my God. Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for listening.